Good morning, Idaho. Hope you're having a wonderful morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on when you're listening to this. Welcome to the Local Yokel Idaho podcast, where we talk about what is going on in the wonderful state of Idaho. Today, John and I will be going over Congressman Simpson's response to why he didn't vote for Congressman Jordan as House Speaker, some stories about Emmett, a missionary who has returned home, and some cereal Dominoes, which that was a fun one, plus a ton of other exciting stories. Glad to have you here today. Please join me for the morning banter where I chat with you a little bit before we get into it. But I understand if you're short on time and prefer to skip the banter, you can use the timestamp that is down in the description to jump straight over to the stories. For those that stayed, thank you so very much. I know the morning banter today is going to actually be almost its own segment because we'll be talking about a little bit of the trip that I took up north / vacation. I mean, it was a vacation, but I did a little bit of footage and different things to share on it because it's Idaho. I got to share some of it, right? But the encouraging thing, though, is that this week the episode should be shorter. I say should. I've said that before, and that hasn't come true. But there is a chance, partly due to the fact that I'm working on a 4-day week rather than a 5 to 6 day week like I normally do because I wasn't here Monday and I was kind of enjoying relaxing and not having to work. Anywho, with that said, should be shorter. And to welcome John in for the morning banter here.
Hey, Tyler. It's good to be here.
Yeah, glad to have you back. We've actually consistently, I think it's been 2 weeks, right?
This is week number 2 in a row, so it's very exciting.
Yes. Consistency. It is nice when it can be achieved.
That is true.
How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. I've had a cold for the last couple days. I'm trying to kick. We had some crud going through the house, and it finally caught up to me. So hopefully I'll be fine. I will be fine, but sooner would be better than later.
Who knows? Maybe it's the evil Rona that got you.
At this point, I don't even know.
Does anyone even test anymore for that? I don't even bother. Did you get corona? I'm like, I don't know. And they're like, did you test? No.
No. Right. I know. I'm sure people still do. I know people still care. I know the corporate media tried to make a big deal about it earlier in the summer, being like, oh, it's coming back. And no one cared or paid attention, so they dropped it.
Which I'm glad. I think that was a good message to send to more of the left-leaning and medical establishment to be like, yeah, we don't really care. Don't bring that back, please. Stay away.
Exactly.
We don't need it. Don't need a take 2. No sequel, please.
Yeah. So do I have the coronavirus? Do I have a coronavirus? I don't know, but I'll get better.
You'll get over it.
Exactly.
Right. Is it the same bug you had from like a couple weeks back? Has it just been lingering, or did you get a second one like back to back?
I think I got a second one back to back. I think I got healthy. Actually, I think I'm on number 3.
What?
I got healthy, and then the kids got sick, and then I got sick, and then my wife was sick, and then I got healthy, and then she got sick again, and now I'm sick again. So I think I'm on like round 3 of this nonsense.
That must be frustrating. I've been there a couple times, and I'm like, Lord, I know you like humor, but please, not right now. Please.
Yeah, it's kind of what happens, though, in a big family. These things just kind of cycle through, and you're sick for a month or 2.
Mm-hmm. Until everyone finally gets that immunity. And kind of trying to transition with that, we'll see if it works here. I'm trying to improve on that. One of the things that does kind of cause more colds and things is cold weather. And over in eastern Idaho, I was looking at some weather reports and stuff. Idaho has officially flipped the switch when it comes to cold weather.
Uh-huh.
It is crazy. I remember when I left for the trip, I was like, oh, cool. It's 60s, 70s. And then I went up north, and I expected up north to be a little colder, right? Because, latitude.
Right.
Then I came back, and I was like, wait a second. I went from 60 to the high in the Treasure Valley being like 40 or 50, and it seems like it's going to be even colder over there in eastern Idaho.
Tomorrow's Saturday, and my son has a baseball game at 10 o'clock out in Star.
Ooh.
We need to be on the field at 9 a.m., and it's supposed to be 27 degrees. So, fall baseball. Yay.
Ooh, bring your thermals. Oof.
Seriously.
But, anywho, we've sidetracked ourselves. I have. Guilty as charged. We'll see if we can even keep with our promise of keeping it shorter, which, that's far-fetched. But the first day that we left on Friday. Thankfully, it wasn't too late. I think we left at like 10 or something or whatever. So a reasonable time. We went over to La Grande, which LeGrand is an interesting little town over there in Oregon. So we went kind of the Oregon side up into Lewiston for the going up to the trip. And then coming back, we came back down through the Idaho side. But LeGrand is a very interesting town. I've been discovering more little things there that are just interesting that you wouldn't have otherwise known. But we stopped there at a Thai restaurant, which I will shout them out because the food, it was pretty good. Thai Fresh Gardens, I think. Anywho, they had these really cool, like, carved benches and seats and everything. And it was really good. I actually ended up getting the spicy, worst thing to do at a Thai restaurant. Get the, I think it was like spicy basil, like chicken or whatever. And the main reason I did that is because I have a coworker. He is Thai and he'll regularly like make food and different stuff. And I wanted to see how it compared.
All right.
It compared pretty good. Granted, his basil was like fresh grown, so obviously it kind of beat that. But then after we finished there, we went up to Enterprise. Yes. And we talked about this last week. We did make sure to stop by Sugar Time.
Nice.
They're another plug for them. We got in at like the last minute. I think they closed at like 5 or 4. And we were like that 10-minute window. Like, we made it. We made it. And we got in there. And the food, as always, was delicious. We didn't, well, I take that back. We ended up not getting food. We ended up just getting sweets, which... that's kind of more their expertise. Granted, their food is also very, very good. We had that and then went over to the library. And then the main part after that, we went over to Wallowa Lake. And I shot some drone footage. And don't get me wrong, sitting in the car, it was beautiful. That whole valley over there, I can't speak from experience. I haven't been over to anywhere in Europe. I haven't been over to like Germany. But like some of the different people I've talked with that have gone and the different photos and all the things I've seen, I will say that valley there in Wallowa and Enterprise, it does feel like you've stepped into like, you know, somewhere in Germany in the mountains or something. Because you've got these big hills rising on each side of you, right? With timber, and some of them are like, maybe you can see a couple that are snow peaked off in the distance, but then you have all this like farmland that's sitting down on the bottom where there's farming, and then you have like cattle and different stuff, and then so you have this beautiful backdrop of the two, and then they have the Wallowa Lake there, and it is just gorgeous. If you want to take a little bit of a day trip, highly recommend it. Even in the winter, it's pretty.
I'll have to get out there at some point.
Yeah, you should. Especially with the kids. I mean, you can take them and then drop by Sugar Time and get a little something sweet while you're driving. So, you know, they want to go again.
Driving many hours with sugared up children.
I mean, in theory, you could go by the lake after you finish eating the sugar and let them burn it there.
Theoretically, that is true.
Assuming it's not the wintertime. Granted, I haven't done it yet. I plan on, but I've heard there's some really good hiking stuff over there near Wallowa on the mountains and different stuff I was talking about. I haven't done it yet.
I believe it.
It's really pretty. And then I did the drone shots. And the main reason I was trying to get to this is that I shot some of it and I looked at my phone. I was like, oh, okay, I did the shots. And then I went in, and I think I have some of these posted up there on Twitter, and I didn't have to edit them at all. They just looked like something you would find in like a puzzle or something.
Huh.
I was just like, ah!
So you just kind of, you just recorded nice quality stock footage of Wallowa Lake.
Yeah.
Nice.
It looked amazing. And the photos turned out great with the color and everything and the dynamic range.
Well, there you go. How very professional of you.
Not at all. Don't give me that much credit. I don't want to go floating away like Mary Poppins, okay? I gotta be careful here, okay?
That is true. That's true.
But no, it was just very, very pretty. And then we kind of turned back around and then headed further up north, and we swung by a canyon that I didn't even know about that was there, Joseph's Canyon. And it isn't quite as like sharp of a drop if any of you guys have been over to Hell's Canyon. It's a drop.
Huh.
But this one, it was actually more like sloping. Then it kind of came in, and then you could almost sit at the top and see the timber of these full massive trees down at the bottom. But these big massive trees down on the bottom of the canyon looked like little twigs, but you could tell looking at them that's a really big tree.
Right.
And so it was this kind of like weird perception kind of looking down through the canyon there.
That's awesome.
Which I know you have a little bit of experience because you've gone over to like what was it, Grand Canyon, right? We were talking about that a couple Sundays back.
Yeah. I've been down to the Grand Canyon a couple times, and it's it's as breathtaking as people say it is. People aren't lying when they say it's breathtaking. But other canyons are also really cool. Shoot, what is it? Is it down in Twin Falls?
I know there's the really big waterfalls down there. You've got the Idaho Falls, but I know Hell's Canyon that I talked about earlier is actually deeper than the Grand Canyon. It's just not as long.
Right.
Or wide, but it is deeper technically.
I believe it.
But anywho, the canyon there was really pretty. I haven't posted that on Twitter yet. I've been kind of metering out the photos, but as of the recording of this, it should be coming out on Twitter at some point. But anyway, we wrapped that up, and then we came back, coming kind of the back end of Lewiston. I hadn't done that before. It's very flat. It reminds me of like driving out towards Mountain Home or Twin Falls. You're just kind of on this plateau, and then you can see the mountains in the distance as you're kind of getting closer to meeting up to where Lewiston and Clarkston meet there at the fork of those two rivers, which I am blanking the name of those rivers at the moment. What are they? I have a computer in front of me. I should be able to manage this. Manage a podcast. I should be able to manage a map. Ah, that's where it is. So it's where the Snake River meets up with the Clearwater River. That's right.
All right.
But yeah. Point in case, coming back there, it's a really pretty drive to do that to Lewiston. But the one criteria I would give is if you're someone who is easily carsick.
Oh.
There is a stretch of road that has some really, really gnarly switchbacks.
Are you someone who is easily carsick?
No, thankfully not.
Okay.
Thankfully not. Granted, if I look down at a book too long, then I can do myself in.
Well, I think that's pretty much everybody.
I met some people, they can just sit there and they can do whatever they like in a car.
Huh.
And they'll be fine. Yeah, where is it? So yeah, just north there of Joseph's Canyon viewpoint, it does some hairpin turns.
Nice.
As you're going through the canyon. Granted, it's really pretty. We were like driving through it and kind of coming back up out of the canyon hollow, whatever you want to call it. And the sun was setting, so I was able to take a quick photo of that. I did post that on Twitter as well.
That's cool.
But yeah, I really wish I could have gotten like some footage of the switchbacks to show like some aerial top downs with the drone. But by the time we were driving, I think it was almost like 9 or 10 and the light was kind of fading. And I was just like, nope, no need to do it. We'll just head on in. I'm tired. The day's done. This is a vacation. This isn't for just work.
Right?
Let's get into Clarkston and Lewiston.
That would be an interesting project though, to kind of go and find cool roads and record yourself driving on them.
Yeah.
That'd be fun.
Right. But anywho, that was the time up there, which was great going along that side. I don't think I've never done that way. There again, if you're someone who has a weak stomach, wouldn't recommend it. Just go the Idaho route up to Lewiston. But if you want to see some interesting sights and not a lot of traffic, I would recommend that. You know what? For the sake of time, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to leave you on a little bit of a cliffhanger, and we will save the second and third day of the trip for next week because we're going to try to actually get this episode to stay under an hour. That's my hope.
All right.
We'll see. We might get snagged on the Mike Simpson story up here coming up. But anyway, thank you for joining me for the morning banter. We definitely bantered along, and let's move into the stories here. First story here, as I teased, Mike Simpson's response to House Speaker vote. This comes by the East Idaho News by Logan Ramsey. As we discussed last week, Idaho Congressman Mike Simpson refused to vote for Representative Jim Jordan for House Speaker. This turn of events frustrated many people in Idaho and even caused Dorothy Moon, the chair of the Republican Party of Idaho, to call him out. All that said, last week, Congressman Simpson wrote an op-ed explaining why he refused to vote for Representative Jim Jordan as Speaker of the U.S. House of Representatives. In it, Simpson said that Jordan has repeatedly taken positions against Idaho's best interests, such as voting against crucial funding for the Idaho National Laboratory and Farm Bill. Simpson also said that Jordan voted against delisting the gray wolf, which in his word has had a positive impact on Idaho, and against the Farm Worker Force Monetization Act, which many Idaho farmers and producers support. Simpson said he could not vote for a speaker who he does not think supports Idaho. He also regularly took shots in his op-ed at Dorothy Moon, one of them being saying, quote, "Perhaps Chairman Dorothy Moon has not lived in Idaho long enough to understand how important things like agriculture, delisting wolves, our national military, and Idaho's National Laboratory, or INEL, are for our state," end quote. Now, with that said, I would highly recommend you go read his entire op-ed, or I actually discovered this when I was doing research for the podcast and this and stuff. You can take the Google Assistant and like tell it, I'm not going to say the word because I'll mess with your phone, but you can actually tell it when you're on an article to read the article to you, and then you can like listen to it as a podcast, and the voice to AI transcription works actually pretty well. Anywho, with that said, kind of breaking down, here are the main 6 points that I pulled out of his op-ed that he did not, or Mr. Simpson, did not vote for Jim Jordan for House Speaker. The first being that Jordan voted against the Idaho National Laboratory's funding, which he says creates thousands of jobs and generates over $120 million for Idaho's state and local tax revenue. The second reason that Mike Simpson did not vote for Jim Jordan was that Jordan voted against the Payments in Lieu of Taxes, or PILT program, which provides funding for rural counties that have 94% federal lands for things such as local schools, police departments, transportation, infrastructure, and health services. Number 3, that Jordan voted against funding for wildlife suppression activities. 4, that Jordan voted against funding for the infrastructure at Gowan Field and Mountain Home Air Force Base. 5, Jordan voting against legislation to delist the gray wolf. And lastly, number 6, Jordan voting against the Farm Bill. So coming into the commentary here, those that listened last week will remember, not very happy with Mike Simpson. We'll put it that way. I wanted him to vote for Jordan. And I had to very much slim down a lot of things listening to and reading the op-ed that he gave, and kind of just giving a background on each one of these. I tried to write them in the way that Mike Simpson presented them so I wouldn't be contorting his words for those positions. But I do kind of want to rebuttal on those a little bit and have John join me kind of going through each one of those. The first one for the INL National Laboratory. And for most of these, when it comes to funding, and for the life of me, I cannot remember him. There was a gentleman, he's one of our Idaho senators here in the state. He actually posted a tweet that's kind of relevant on this, that just because someone votes no on a funding thing doesn't mean they're not for funding for that thing. Sometimes that's because the funding is incomplete, there isn't proper allocation of where funds are going, and there's just these blank checks being written and you don't want to vote for it. Just because you don't vote for certain funding doesn't mean you're not in support of it. So just because Mr. Simpson here is saying that Jordan isn't in favor of Idaho's National Laboratory Bill or whatever for more funding there, it might be of a different reason. Now, with that said, counter argument, I don't know where, maybe Jordan did. But I can say overall with these funding things, I could say that there's a case to be made. The federal government is spending way too much lately. And Jordan may be looking at the perspective of, does this place really need this? Is it going to die if we don't give this funding? Well, no, INEL has a lot of money from private industry going into it as well. Because if Idaho's National Laboratory there for nuclear does well for the whole industry on what it develops and improves and what happens for regulators and different things. So they're not going to be short on money on that. What is your perspective on that first one?
So we talked a lot about the position of the ultra-conservative caucus, whatever they're calling themselves.
I think it's the Freedom Caucus, right?
Freedom Caucus, thank you. We talked about the perspective of the Freedom Caucus last time, where they want to get rid of pork from bills. And this is one where I could see this being an omnibus spending package for laboratories nationwide, or we're going to have laboratories and other stuff in this bill. Like, you know, when I and this is true for all of these things, when I hear people talking about, well, he voted against this and he voted for that, I kind of go, yeah, but we don't have single issue bills. So I don't know what else was in the bill that he actually voted against. So
right.
I don't know. What does this have to do with much of anything? The funny thing is the guy that has ended up being voted in, Mike Johnson, he seems to be even more a hardliner about reducing government size and reducing government spending. So I have a hard time believing a lot of these points because they're all with regard to funding, and the new speaker is going to be pushing to reduce funding everywhere. So, I mean, yeah, cool that Simpson has reasons that he didn't vote for Jim Jordan.
Well, he has reasons, but part of me wonders if this was a trying to save his image type of find reasons. Because if he already knew these reasons, it wouldn't have been quick for when this was all happening on Twitter for him to say, well, I can't vote for Jim Jordan, X, Y, and Z in some very quick publication. It wouldn't have been hard, or some interview or something, right? He could have instantly just been like, this is why, boom, 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 we're not. No, he took an extra week after it's kind of not as much relevant, right? And then comes back and says, okay, now these are my reasons. Now that you've had time to justify, possibly, why you didn't vote that way.
Yeah, well, and his reasons don't make sense giving the guy that he ultimately voted for, because the new speaker is going to be just as hardlined about reducing federal spending as anybody else. So why didn't you vote against this guy?
Right. Plus, I think a lot of this, and the more that I've watched politics and the more that I've tried to learn and understand how it works, because it's a good thing. It's not a bad thing. It's part of the things that govern our lives. Politics is the interaction between people in public spheres. That a lot of stuff sometimes is about image. That I think Mr. Simpson has some more squishy people, maybe. That he is trying to not lose in the fray, and him voting for a known very conservative person in the House that everyone knows. He's, had a ton of interviews. A lot of people know the name Jim Jordan in politics. Rather than this gentleman, what was his name again? I'm sorry. Perfect example, right? I've forgotten his name.
Yeah, no, nobody knew about this. Mike Johnson.
He just came out of left field, and so you give Simpson like, okay, cool, I can vote, and later I can say, look, I voted for a conservative guy, and he did all these conservative things, right? But it saves him face that then with all of his squishy people, he's like, well, I didn't know he was going to go that way, and blah, 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 blah. He just came out of left field, and I just voted for it because it's what the party was recommending, and so I went for it, and then he can have his cake and eat it too.
Yeah, I know there's also a group of people in the House who have loyalty to former Speaker Mike McCarthy.
Okay.
And so there was a group of Republicans who were aiding Mike McCarthy in stalling voting for a new speaker or voting in a new speaker.
Trying to make it like worse or something?
Well, with the intention of re-electing McCarthy as the speaker, because they were going to go, yeah, we didn't vote for him. We need somebody. Let's bring back the old guy. He at least got things done.
Right. But I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe that was a tactic that was going on, but I feel like that would have been, from what I saw, unrealistic from them to think, because of the fact that everything that I read, McCarthy was just like, I don't want this anymore. You guys squabble. Like, a parent that's sitting there and you have the two childs that are fighting and it's just like, I'm done. Let me be free. I'm going to walk out. That's the impression I got from McCarthy.
I have a hard time. I would have a hard time believing that from McCarthy.
Fair enough.
Yeah, that's just our opinions, and everyone's got one.
With that said, I really, for everyone listening, I sense maybe a little bit of screaming. I really would have liked to deep dive a little bit more in each one of these points and really pull it out and do some fact checking and some deeper diving into it and stuff. But one, operating on a 4-day week for making the podcast and different stuff. Granted, if you guys want us to go into this more, please feel free to reach out to me. If I get enough people, like with any of these stories, if you guys want us to go more into depth on it, want me to do more research, please let me know. I would love to. It's just a time allocation. If enough people are interested, then I will totally do it. But I have to be wise with the limited time I have when making these episodes. But with that said, he did give his reasons. But in any case, we do have a speaker now, which is very nice. When I was writing this, I don't think we had one.
No, it happened. It happened super suddenly.
Yes. And we'll see what the future holds. God governs in the affairs of men, Benjamin Franklin. Now, moving into the next story and a little bit out of politics into something a little bit more local, a little bit more calm, we'll put it that way. Downtown Emmett Store's Front Monopoly. This comes by the Boise Dev by Margaret Carmel. Emmett, for those of you who have visited or live there, it is a small town with a mountain setting and a small town feel just 45 minutes north of Boise. However, that is drawing new residents, and the downtown area has surprisingly been struggling with some vacancy issues. Huckleberry Properties Idaho LLC, a Boise company, owns 13 storefronts across 10 buildings in downtown Emmett. The company has owned the building since December of 2018 and has left 6 of the spaces empty. Emmett Mayor Gordon Petrie said that situations like this are a downside to the constitutional right to own property, and that the city cannot make the owner rent the space to interested business owners or sell the buildings to someone who will. However, he is disappointed with the situation. Petrie said that this isn't the first time Emmett has seen these buildings not be rented out. He noted that Huckleberry Properties bought the buildings from, quote, another absentee landlord, end quote, and that the city had high hopes for their redevelopment and new vibrancy in downtown, but it hasn't happened. Petrie said that this is likely due to the, quote, perfect storm, end quote, of the timing of where Huckleberry bought the property at the end of 2018, a little more than a year before the state faced restrictions on business operations due to COVID-19. Forrest Teva, the former owner of Possum Trot Traders, said he's rented his space since 1985 for his antique gun business. He also said that the representatives from Huckleberry Properties talked with the business owners on Main Street a few years ago, but other than that, he doesn't have a relationship with the owners. He says that his building is in, quote, reasonably good shape, end quote. Tevba thinks that the owners would rent the space if they could, but it has been on the decline anyway due to traffic through Emmett passing south of the town on Highway 16 and 52. Petrie said that the owner of the Huckleberry Properties is, quote, very difficult, end quote, to get in touch with, and that he knows of at least one tenant who used to rent one of the spaces in the western end of Main Street who had a water leak issue and left the building. Petrie said that it is sad that Emmett has been left with this situation, but that is what it is. So I did not, I will admit this thought did cross my mind when I have been in downtown Emmett, that you see some of these stores that, you know, they're vibrant, there's things going on, there's business, and there's other ones that are just blank. And then I've seen the growth that's going on with Emmett, and you see all the cars that are wheeling through downtown, and it's so close to Boise, I would expect it to be way, way busier. When was the last time that you dropped by there, John?
I think I was out there this spring. I drove out there for a baseball game. And yeah, driving through, it feels like a downtown that's kind of dying.
It feels like a diseased tree where there's certain parts that are really growing.
Yeah.
And then there's other parts that are like withering and struggling, where, you know, you've got the Roan's Diner there that's doing great. It's always busy in the evenings when I've driven past it. Then you have the other area there next to the freeway, or not the freeway, the highway, with Sonic and the Albertsons there, that's doing really well. And then you have other areas that like close downtown. There's life, but then there's not life, and it's this weird, it's like a sickly plant. Yeah,
that's a good way to put it, and that does make sense. I don't know. I know I do know that building and renovating.
Plus, you have some background in this, don't you?
I do. I'm an electrical engineer by trade, and I do building design work. And
John is full of many things. He can be a video editor. He's got voiceover capabilities, ice fishing. Now we know he's an electrical engineer.
Yeah, mostly full of hot air. But what I do know is that the permitting and construction process is long and super expensive and daunting. And restrictions have made it really difficult to do things. Also, since Idaho kind of shut down due to COVID, construction's been really, really expensive.
Yeah, I haven't been following that too much on the numbers there.
Oh, it's ridiculously expensive, and there aren't enough contractors to get the work done. And so if you want somebody to work on your stuff, chances are good you're waiting for it because they're all booked up.
I know with plumbers I've run into that, but the other fields I haven't had too much issue though.
Maybe not for small work, but I do know for big work, everybody is backed up. And it can get expensive to do work. So while I understand that it's a bummer, I also understand that government regulations aren't helping these things. So if the mayor actually wants to help businesses move in, then lowering the required amount of effort to get them in is going to help. So, like, cool, mayor can complain all he wants about how this place isn't bringing in new people, but if he's not going to actually do anything about it, I don't.
I mean, playing devil's advocate here, just briefly, trying to play that role. He is just talking about downtown in this article. And from what I remember looking at the Boise Devs article, it's not that those slots or areas that are closed right now that businesses can't move into them. It's that Huckleberry LLC isn't actually allowing them to be rented out to people at all, that they're not available, that Huckleberry LLC is just holding them and they're not doing anything with them.
Yeah, and that could be for any number of reasons. I don't know. It seems odd.
Right. Which, there again, when we talk about this stuff, I give the sources. I would recommend you go read the article over at their Boise Dev. They did try. I left it out of here just for the sake of time, but the reporter over there did try to get a hold of whoever owns the Huckleberry LLC or whatever, and they even struck out. And they have far more resources than I would ever dream to have yet with the podcast here in the channel, which it seems fishy, but also the whole thing does seem fishy that so much of the downtown that the city council would allow some company to own so much of it. I think that's also part of the city council's problem there of them allowing someone to buy that much.
Yeah, this definitely screams to me that the mayor is complaining to the wrong people, or he's complaining to get something done, but the people he's complaining to aren't actually the people he's talking to. So it doesn't seem like the mayor is actually talking to Huckleberry Properties. Seems like he's actually talking to the city council or other government entities who would have some power to do something. Because what's he going to do to the owner of Huckleberry Properties? Like, send him a mean letter? It sounds like this guy doesn't care.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I could see there, again, not a lawyer, that maybe the mayor or the city council could try to do is start ratcheting up maybe fines or different things because those businesses are an eyesore or something maybe that they could do because there's nothing going on in there, to get Huckleberry Holdings to let go of them because they're just bleeding money since they're not doing anything with them.
I could see that.
Granted, I don't know the legalese enough to know what powers extend from the city council that they can do in the mayor's position.
I don't know. But yeah, it seems kind of goofy all around.
But hey, at least the more you know, next time you're in downtown Emmett, fun fact, you can tell someone, you can be like, hey, most of these buildings are owned by the same company. Fun little fact there. And for those in Emmett, maybe have a conversation with your city council on this one if you're curious, as well as I was, why some of the downtown businesses don't have any businesses in them.
And now you know.
Then moving on to our next one here, and also keeping with the Emmett theme for this week's episode, ITD looking to improve highway to Emmett. This comes by the Boise Dev by Margaret Carmel. On your way there, the northern edges of Ada County and Gem County are experiencing rapid growth with new subdivisions and businesses popping up along Highway 16. For very understandable reasons, the growth is putting a strain on the highway's infrastructure, and Idaho Transportation Department, or ITD, is currently reevaluating its plans for the area. ITD is considering several options, including widening the highway, building frontage roads, and redesigning intersections. The goal is to improve safety and efficiency for both commuters and locals living near the highway. The cities of Eagle and Star are also weighing in on the project. Star Mayor Trevor Chadwick hopes to see ITD remove a curve in the highway and build an overpass to improve the safety. He also wants to see the highway limited to express traffic with limited access points, so it won't be like the Eagle Road. Emmett Mayor Gordon Petrie is conflicted about the project. He said widening the road would make it safer, but it would also draw more traffic to the area. Quote, "So what do we do?" Petrie said to the Emmett City Council chambers. "Do we increase the number of lanes? Do we become a mini Southern California? I take the position that if you build them, they will come. You encourage traffic when you accommodate traffic," end quote. He is particularly concerned about the speed limit near the Payette River Regional Technical Academy, which he says is too high for the current conditions. Lastly, Tina Heffley, the Gem County Chamber of Commerce CEO, supports widening the highway. She said it would make the road safer and reduce the number of traffic deaths, which, speaking of which, Highway 16 has, in the 4 years between 2018 to 2022, had 344 crashes, and of those, 10 of them were fatal. ITD says it will take input from all stakeholders when deciding the future of Highway 16. The agency plans to have a design ready in 4 years and construction starting as early as 2023. Which, on that note of 2023, that's not soon enough. I've vented about this before on the podcast, but in America, there was a point when we could build things really quick, like dams within 2 years with federal approval. Like an agent would come out from the federal government in the 1800s, inspect it, and then the dam would be built. The only thing that was like the restricting part was the agent getting from the federal government to the dam site to approve it. This shouldn't take so long. We need to figure out a way to make it more efficient. But with that said, I will say that the road going from Emmett or heading up that way, Highway 16, it does badly need a bit of help. Also, I feel like there should be big flashing signs along that road, because the one thing that pet peeves me, and I'm not a speeder, we'll put that on the record, is that the road, there's a section of it that is 65 and it's a 2-lane road. And you'll get people who are driving on that 65 mile an hour, highway, right? And they'll be doing 55 or 50. And they have a line of people backing up behind them. And they're not accelerating at all. And you're just like, this is a highway. Move! I understand if someone's like 5 under, if they were like 60, but I've sat there, looked at my speedometer and seen like 50, 55 as I'm going. And I'm either right on them or I'm on the line of people, and it drives me mad.
Yep. It's rough. I only drive up to Emmett occasionally, but I cannot imagine commuting from there. Now, having said that, Mayor Petrie's statement of, was it you encourage traffic when you accommodate traffic? No, you're wrong. Traffic will come. So I lived in Austin, Texas, and Austin had that same idea. They said, you know what? We're not going to improve our city roads infrastructure because that way our city will stay small and we won't grow. Yeah. And you know what happened to Austin? It exploded.
Boom.
And everybody complains about the traffic. Now, I don't know, maybe the city saved a bunch of money because they didn't upgrade their roads. But goodness gracious, they're now paying for it because they're having to upgrade everything after the fact. And they're now so far behind that Austin's roads will never catch up to what Austin's roads should be.
Except if you cut red tape.
Well, yes, but even then, the problem is just to do construction on a thing means you have to shut down that thing.
Yes.
Like to widen the highway means you have to close some of the highway, and now you're restricting access. So if your roads are already overcrowded, and now you're restricting access, that's a problem. So one of the things that I appreciate about Boise is it seems like we're forward looking. We're saying, all right, things are growing. We're going to expand them. We saw Chinden Road over the last couple of years get a big old upgrade west of Eagle Road. And Chinden's now awesome. It's a 4-lane road.
Just hums along.
There were some problems out by the Zamzos out there, and they got that taken care of. I don't know what the problem was there, but they built a 4-lane road
Also widening the freeway from the Nampa exit for Karcher and all that to 3 lanes all the way out to the furthest Caldwell exit. That was really smart. So there's no bottleneck anymore there. It is heavenly.
There's a lot of things that I see that we've done really well. We're even upgrading the turn onto Highway 16 going north from, is it Eagle?
They're making a full-on, like, brand new connector, and there's going to be, I think, a stretch of freeway that runs all the way up to that Emmett Highway 16 and connects it to the main interstate.
Yeah, and it's going to be awesome. But then you're going to get onto Highway 16, and it's
going to bottleneck.
It's going to bottleneck. And it's going to bottleneck on Highway 16 because Highway 16 needs to increase. And so, I saw them building that intersection. I said, oh, that's awesome. They're building this intersection out, and then they're going to continue on Highway 16. So to hear now Mayor Petrie saying that, no, we don't want to increase the size of this road.
Well, in all fairness, he is conflicted. He isn't shooting it down.
He better be conflicted.
John's like, I have some words. Don't do to Idaho what happened to Austin.
Yeah. Be smarter. Be smarter.
I know some people that live out there in Emmett, and Emmett's in this weird space. And I have people out there that I know they're going to be listening that love its small community atmosphere. And I give you that. It has that. But I think there's a way to do both and to be careful when doing them. Don't get me wrong. I don't think we should rush ahead with things. But when it comes to the traffic side of things, unless you're saying that you feel that Emmett is independent enough that you don't need the rest of the valley and that you can do all your shopping and everything just in Emmett area, then all right, I get it. I mean, the one thing I did hear is that the city council over there in Emmett, and maybe this will affect this, but they capped certain areas where houses can't be developed because they're designated as farmland area to try to hold on to more of the farmland. And then they capped the size of any lots that are built there in Emmett. I think it's like an acre. Don't quote me on that, but it's like a cap size. So all the properties still have to be reasonably large. And I think also that each one of the houses that go in out there, they have to pay. Each house has a certain, I want to call it like a utility tax, but each one of them per house that's built, they get charged a certain amount that goes towards the new roads and the new utilities and everything that has to be piped in there to pay for that new house.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think that's that tax part, I think, is a smart thing for the rest of the state, and more towns should do that. But part of me is conflicted on that housing one, where I understand you want it to keep it rural and you're trying to incentivize that, but here in Idaho, the demand is high. People want to come here, and so what you're doing is you're now shrinking the available market. You're artificially telling the market you can only get this large. Right? Because there's only so much land. And so what do we know about markets? When the product that everyone wants becomes less, what happens to prices? That everyone's already crying about in Idaho. Everyone already hates that prices.
They skyrocket.
They explode, which if we want to figure out a way to make housing affordable in Idaho, we shouldn't. As much as we really want to. I don't think the solution is stuff like that where we're setting certain lot. I mean, I can understand lot sizes to an extent, but limiting the amount of houses in a sense that are being created, we should find effective ways to have more housing built that integrates properly with community and doesn't destroy the culture that exists.
And figure out how to build these things efficiently and cost effectively. Part of that would be lowering some restrictions or rolling back some code requirements. Because, again, coming from the construction industry, there are a lot of our building codes that are out there that seem to be put in place. I won't overstate it, but seem to be placed partially so that more expensive products can be sold.
I think I was listening to someone that we both know and listens to the show, but he works in HVAC and different stuff. And he was telling me that the Biden administration, they passed a new regulation that requires a certain. They redid basically the rating system for the efficiency of heaters and AC units and all that, and it requires now the new one requires everyone to be a higher, like, how do I put this? Imagine a scale of 1 to 10. And then that's your normal scale. But the new scale has been shifted to the right. So the thing that used to be a 1 is a 3 or a 4 or 5 on that scale. And so anyone that says, say you're trying to go get your heater and everything or whatever, you have to get, instead of getting the efficiency 1 isn't even an option anymore. The bare minimum is you have to get a 3 or a 4 to be even within that grade, which that costs more. And thus, I've heard actually their amount of sales and work, there's some days they're not even working.
Yeah.
There's just not any sales.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's, as an industry professional who is in the construction world. Now, I'm not a contractor. I'm not an installer.
Don't give him a bunch of phone calls. Don't flood him.
Right? Yeah, gosh. I don't answer my phone anyway. It's okay. But yeah, the nationwide restrictions are ridiculous. And I've done a lot of design work in California, and it seems like almost every jurisdiction idolizes California building regulations and wants to be like them.
No, don't do that. No.
Yeah, and they're terrible. And it's super expensive to build anything in the cities in California or Washington or Florida or Oregon, any of those states. And Florida's a weird one, but I think Florida, because it only has flipped conservative recently. Florida used to be a bastion of liberalism and save the earth stuff.
Kind of like Hawaii.
Yeah. Thankfully, I've never done any work in Hawaii, but yeah, I don't know. I take beef with the people that continue moving our codes forward at rates that aren't healthy.
So are you saying, John, that the reason we have a housing crisis in America is partly our own doing?
Yes, actually, that is absolutely true.
Hey, who knows? Maybe at some point we should try to do a segment with you helping with the research to talk about that, a special local yokel exclusive. Maybe we'll do that at some point with your expertise.
Sure.
John's like, all right. But we very much rambled off. It will be interesting to see how that develops. I will admit, adding one last point on this story before we move on from it. The ITD was looking at trying to widen the road and doing stuff, and they already had a plan. And this also, I think, falls in the city council and zoning and planning and stuff. But by the original thing where they were just going to widen the road, the whole way through and just make it wider. But in the time that passed between that plan and then what ended up happening is there's so many different houses and developments, according to ITD, that have developed on the side of the road, they can't confidently widen the road in its current form and it not destroy some new property and different things and the amount of money and legal and everything it would take. And so that's why they're having to revisit the plan. So for someone who's been in this longer than I have and watching this story unfold, that is an element to be aware of.
So because they dragged their feet, now they need to go back to the drawing board.
This is why people should be involved in their local politics and encourage our representatives to keep moving. As much as it may be boring to go to those city zoning and planning things and city council meetings, you can do a lot of good for stuff like this. A lot of good.
Yeah.
Anyway, moving on to our next story here and our last one, a fun one. Idaho-based Missionary pilot released from prison. Yay, we got a positive one. KTVB 7 by Andrew Bartlane. So some very, very, very good news for our family in Nampa. Mission Aviation Fellowship, or MEF, pilot Ryan Coeur has returned home to Idaho after almost a year of being detained by Mozambique police. Mr. Coeur was detained last year on November 4th while flying vitamins, over-the-counter medicine, and other supplies to Mozambique orphans. Police suspected him of aiding terrorists in the northern part of the country, but he was not charged with any crime. Mr. Coeur ended up being held in 4 prisons. While there, according to the article, he received unfiltered water, bread, and 1 full meal a day. So at least he got that. He was released from prison in March of 2023, but was not allowed to leave the country until September, as the Mozambique government kept his passport. Lawyers at the MAAF, the United States government, and Senator Jem Risch of Idaho, yay, thank you, worked with Mozambique to gain possession of Coeur's passport and ensure his safe return home. With that said, the investigation is still ongoing, but MAF anticipates that it will conclude next summer, and officials will clear Coeur. Despite the ordeal and everything that has happened, Mr. Coeur and his wife, they are planning to return to Mozambique next year, believing it is still what God has planned and is calling them to. Which, a very, very encouraging story. And honestly, if you are getting your aviation license, I've heard many a person, just for the flight hours alone and some of the things you can do besides this situation, of course, Mission Aviation Fellowship does some really, really amazing stuff. But it is really encouraging to see that he was able to get back, and also cool to see that, you know, our senators and U.S. government are actually looking out for us when we're abroad. One would hope that would be the case when we're citizens, right?
Yeah. Funny thing that, you know, being my typical jerk self here, makes me laugh that when Brittany Griner gets accused of breaking the law, which she literally broke, we trade an international weapons dealer. But then when a missionary pilot gets charged with something, he rots in jail in a foreign country for a long time, and very little happens.
Also, the media coverage. I think that's the key thing also with the Brittany Griner case, that what American media wants to focus on about, because, you know, as much as we would wish that this doesn't happen regularly, there are American citizens that are being detained, having issues all over the world when they leave the U.S. It's a risk you run, right? That are happening all the time, but the media picks and chooses those cases, right? I mean, with Brittany Griner, she's a celebrity or whatever, so that was expected to get a little bit more coverage, but especially in these missionary cases, or with all the different American citizens that get detained in China, don't hear much about that often.
Well, we can't upset the Chinese. They might
cut our solar panel supply.
Oh, no, not our solar panels. Don't get me started on solar panels.
Wonder what you thought of that one when I was recording it a week or two back about the Boise airport and solar power.
I have thoughts. They're in there. They don't matter right now.
Fair enough. But in any case, getting off power and staying on international politics and missionaries in that case, I'm glad to hear that he was able to make it back.
Yeah.
If I had known if Mr. Coeur listens, I would have been praying. I do pray for missionaries and different stuff daily as best I can, but I'm very glad you're back, and we'll now continue and hopefully pray for your, what's the word I'm thinking of?
Exoneration.
Is exoneration or acquitted? No, it's not acquitted. Cleared of the charges. That's what I want. That'll work. But yes, cleared of the charges. We're all fine here. Everything's fine. Trust me, Mr. Coeur, I'm very happy to hear. My brain is just tired. I wish you the best. I'm glad. Also, if you end up going back there, which it sounds like it, many prayers. I hope that you don't get detained again, and that the Lord can use your work to help many of the people there that need both God's word and need medical help, because we are not just soul. We are body and soul. We need both. Both of those things are very, very important. Now, moving into the quickies here. These are stories that I didn't feel like were worth a full commentary, or didn't have enough time for it, one of the two, but I still thought you guys needed to know about. Our first one here is Lewiston man catches record-breaking kokanee salmon. This comes by KTVV7 by staff. Up north in Lewiston, which I was just there, on Friday, October 13th, an angler by the name of Matt Husking caught a record-breaking kokanee salmon, according to the Idaho Department of Fish and Game. He went fishing in the Clearwater River and caught a colossal kokanee that measured at 32.68 inches in length and weighed 11.78 pounds. This salmon weighed slightly more than the previous record holder by 0.48 ounces. For the record, Idaho Fish and Game determines record-breaking fish by their size and certified weight. According to them, this is the third year they have seen a strong return in the kokanee salmon, and there has only been one other year where over 15,000 adults passed over the Lower Granite Dam. They also say that fish like this are rare, quote, "There are bigger kokanee out there, but not many," end quote, said Joe DuPont, Clearwater Regional Fishery Manager. Based on the 2,400 kokanee we have trapped at the Lower Granite Dam this year, only 2 surpassed the size of this fish. All that to say, congratulations to Mr. Hosking on his record-breaking catch. It must have been a real joy to reel it in.
And coming back down into the Boise area, Bogus Basin gets first snowfall. This comes from KTVB7 by Jude Binkley. For all those snow lovers out there in the Treasure Valley, I have some good news for you, which you may or may not already know. Bogus Basin, a nonprofit ski area just northeast of Boise, received its first official snowfall of the season last Tuesday night. Bogus expects to welcome skiers and snowboarders on Thanksgiving Day, just under a month from now. Bogus Basin's Director of Mountain Operations, Nate Shake, said there is a flurry of excitement on the mountain with the first snowfall of the season. He also said that there is a mild panic as everyone is trying to button up the last finishing touches in preparation for the winter season. To prepare for the season, Bogus Basin takes a 6-week period to turn around from summer operations. This preparation includes tuning up lifts, hiring hundreds of seasonal workers, taking care of the slopes, and mowing the runs. Shake said that skiers and snowboarders can expect to find some good off-trail powder shots this season, as the ski area has been cutting a lot of brush. Bogus Basin also uses snow guns to help ensure an earlier opening. These snowmakers are expected to power up within the next few days, but Shake said that they need to be at a reasonably low temperature, below 28 degrees Fahrenheit, in order to make snow. For some background, Bogus is coming off a historic 80th season, which allowed for 148 days of skiing and snowboarding, their longest season ever. Shake said that once they start seeing snow, season passes start selling out quickly. Bogus Basin has already reached capacity on twilight passes, and only a few Beyond Bogus season passes and winter season passes remain. For those interested in getting some before they run out, you can get season pass options on Bogus Basin's website. Overall, Bogus Basin is excited about the upcoming winter season and is working hard to prepare for a Thanksgiving Day opening. And then up in Coeur d'Alene won't be California. This comes by the Bonners Ferry Herald by Bill Bewley. Idaho Secretary of State Phil McGrain gave a speech at the Coeur d'Alene Regional Chamber Luncheon last Thursday. In his speech, he talked about the changing demographics of Idaho and the impact it is having on the state's politics. He also discussed the importance of voter education and civic engagement. McGrain said that Idaho is becoming a more Republican state, with nearly 70% of new arrivals affiliating as Republicans. We tried to verify this, but couldn't find the numbers. He said this is changing the state's politics as close races between candidates are becoming less common. McGrain also said it is crucial for the state to be a neutral source where voters can access information about candidates, registration, what's on ballots, and the election process. He cited the state's voteidaho.gov website as a place to improve voter education and create an active, engaged populace of political wonks. In a quick look at campaign contributions as of October 10, McGrain said that most local candidates receive donations from local residents, with some outside money coming in. He noted that candidates in the Boise mayor's race have generated more than $500,000 in campaign contributions. McGrain also said that voting in the primaries is gaining more importance with the lack of political diversity He said that in Idaho, women consistently outvote men and older voters outvote young voters. Overall, McGrain's speech was a call for civic engagement and a reminder of the importance of voting. He also highlighted the changing demographics of Idaho and the impact it is having on the state's politics and life.
Moving over to the eastern part of the state and out of the north there, to Rexburg Orchestra plays Russian. This is the East Idaho News by Mary Boyle. For those lovers of classical music over in the eastern part of the state, the Rexburg Tabernacle Orchestra will be performing Tchaikovsky's Symphony 1, Winter Dreams, and an Overture Fantasy, Romeo and Juliet on Thursdays, November 2nd at 7:30 p.m. at the Rexburg Tabernacle Civic Center. The performance is free, but donations are encouraged. All proceeds will be used to maintain the orchestra and the historic tabernacle. The Rexburg Tabernacle Orchestra is a community orchestra composed of professional musicians, educators, students, and musicians from the Upper Valley. Musicians are volunteers, but they are all highly skilled and deeply dedicated. The orchestra holds 3 free concerts per year, which are sponsored by the city of Rexburg. The concerts are an excellent opportunity to enjoy beautiful music and support the local community. Now coming to our last quickie here and wrapping it up here, and a very fun one that I teased earlier. Local food bank does cereal Dominoes. This comes by East Idaho News by Andrea Olson. This story is a short one, but it gave me a good chuckle, and it might for you as well. Dale Evans Bank in Rigby held a cereal drive for Giving Cupboard, a food pantry in Jefferson County. The drive was a success, with the bank collecting 1,363 cereal boxes. Now this is where the funny part comes in. To celebrate the end of the drive, bank employees created a line of dominoes around the entire office using these cereal boxes. It took them at least 45 minutes to set up the dominoes, but it was all worth it when the dominoes line was tripped, to everyone's satisfaction, as you can imagine. After the dominoes show was over, everyone helped load the cereal boxes into a Giving Cupboard trailer. The bank staff were grateful to the community's support and the Giving Cupboard's work in the community. Thank you for listening to the entire podcast. I sincerely hope you found it enjoyable and valuable. If I missed any important points or provided incorrect information, please feel free to reach out to me via email at localyokelidaho2022@gmail.com or on Twitter by tweeting me at localyokelidaho. With the small team we have, we're not able to cover everything, but we do our best to cover the most interesting and important stories. Thank you for your continued support and assistance. That's all for now, and I wish you a fantastic rest of your week. Godspeed.